They tell me that I'm never gonna make it. They want me to do something that could make sense. They hate when I keep dreaming I'll be famous, but I don't give a fuck, I'ma keep chasing. I got
What's up, guys? Episode number 5 of the Be Better podcast. This is a special episode. We got our first guest on, Mr. Bruce Weaver, my dad, and this is an exciting episode. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about your past, your history. So just a little introduction to start off with. He was a high school teacher for 33 years. He has ran 7 marathons, a 50-miler for his 50th birthday.
Ouch.
And is now currently working at a recovery center for drug and alcoholics and has been sober for 10 years. So Mr. Bruce Weaver, ladies and gentlemen. But
I'm not sure if that made me sound good or not. But, so with that, glad to be here. Thanks, man.
Yeah, so we're just going to be getting into your journey through recovery, and let's just get started off with kind of when did you know that you had an issue with alcohol or that you kind of saw this becoming a problem in your life?
You know, it's a tough question because when you look back on it, you're obviously able to reflect back and see things. The real answer to that is I knew for a long time before I actually decided I was going to do something about it. I can tell you this, at every phase of my life, I had people telling me that, you know, you might want to take a look at this. You know, you drink a little too much, you act this way, or, and at first it was like I was just in college, and it was, then I was in my 20s, and, and what you realize is that old saying, you keep moving the goalpost. And I kept doing that. I was like, I used to always compare myself to a lot of my family. I came from a very, to say alcoholism is prevalent in my family would be a gross understatement. And, and a lot, very dysfunctional. So I would compare myself to my family, and I would be like, hey, I'm educated, I'm doing okay. And then it would be like, maybe I do drink a little too much, but I haven't got a DUI. Then obviously you'd get the DUI. I said, I got a DUI. However, so that kept progressing. It said, this hasn't happened, my yets. But then the yets kept happening until it eventually was, I guess you could say my body of work was, it was too hard to ignore anymore. And it was causing problems in every aspect of my life.
Yeah. So obviously, you have 3 kids, and great kids, might I say. So
2 of them are pretty good. So, great, 3 great kids.
So starting that family, and so you became sober after you had your 3 kids, and they were both kind of older. I think Bethany and Brianna were in high school. I was in elementary school, and
Brianna was heading into her senior year. Bethany was a freshman, and you were in elementary school at the time. Yes.
What was the switch? Because I know at some point you have to come to yourself and understand this is what I'm doing, and this isn't who I want to be anymore.
Sure, yeah, and honesty is the big thing, and we lie to ourselves more than we lie to anybody else. Getting real and getting honest with yourself. And I think it's important to point out is that I don't love you and your sisters or your mom more now than I did then. I love you just the same, but I was unable to literally stop drinking.
Yeah.
Okay, and so because what you find out in recovery, Ivan, to kind of address your question, is that you can't do it for anybody else. It has to be for you. If you're getting sober, that might be the start. My initial thing for getting sober was I was tired of disappointing people who I loved and loved me. And I also was getting tired of getting in trouble. And so I was doing it initially to stop, for lack of a better way to put it, the bleeding, and then honestly, I didn't want to quit drinking, even though I knew, at that point, I knew it was killing me. I had a doctor said if I didn't quit drinking, I was going to be dead in 2 months. And my initial thought, this doctor doesn't know what he's talking about, but in reality, he did. And then, but eventually you come to you have to realize it is a life or death situation, but you have to do it for yourself. So,
yeah, I was obviously part of that whole journey and kind of seeing that, and it took me getting older to kind of realize how big the situation was. But for people listening, I think they kind of need to figure out their why as to why, no matter what they're suffering, is why they want to stop. And would you say your why was kind of your family, or your why
Well,
was
that
super
was
important?
that was the first thing. Absolutely, you know, I didn't want to lose my family. I didn't want to lose my marriage to your mom, and I didn't want to lose my job, and you know, but when I got sober, I can tell you this, all those things were up in the air, you know, because I didn't know if my marriage was going to get saved. I didn't know if I was going to be fired from my job as a teacher, you know. Ironically, one of my main teaching assignments was a time, and I can laugh about it now, but the irony of my life was killing me, is that I was a driver's ed teacher. So a drunk driver's ed teacher is not a good career path to be on, by the way, you know. But so I did want to save all those things, but at the same time, I was scared to death to think about life without drinking, because that was my best friend, you know. I compare it this way to a lot of people I work with now as a drug and alcohol therapist, is that if I quit drinking, I live. If I don't quit drinking, I'm probably going to die and at first lose everything. That sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it? To a logical thinking person, it sounds like, well, that's an easy choice. In fact, though, it really wasn't. It was, I had to make a conscious decision that I wanted, because in my mind, my life was going to be over, and I had this vision in my mind that I was going to sit and binge on Netflix, and that's all. I was never going to have fun again, you know. I don't know if like throwing up blood, getting arrested is fun. If that's the case, I was having a blast, you know. But that's the real of it. The real is that the addiction takes you to places that you never believed possible. Makes you do things, become a person that you didn't think possible. You know, when I was growing up, I saw this. I saw how addiction ruined families, ruined lives, killed family members. And I was like, man, that's never going to be me, bro. No way will that be me. And it did. It became me, you know. And I didn't do some of the stuff that other family members did, you know, some kind of crappy stuff, you know. But I became a drunk just like they were.
Yeah. So let's kind of go down this road. So you kind of, I guess, you got in a little car accident, and then that led to legal issues. So then came rehab. What was your initial thoughts, kind of, when you decided to go to rehab? At that point, did you decide that I'm becoming sober for the rest of my life?
No,
or what was your thoughts
absolutely
then?
not. I was talking to your mom on the phone from jail, sadly, and it just came out. I said, I think I'm going to go to rehab. I was just grabbing at things at that point, you know. The thought of quitting drinking at that point was still so far out there, because I'd gone 10 years basically without missing a day of drinking. I just wanted to see if I could go a day, man. And I literally thought I was going to go here and jump the fence. I literally, in my mind, I didn't think I was going to make it.
What was rehab like? Like the actual environment?
Well, rehab is I can tell you what, I didn't enjoy 1 minute of rehab, but rehab served its purpose. First of all, it dried me out. It showed me that alcoholism is a disease. There's a lot of other aspects to that.
Yeah.
But and most importantly, it put me on the path to sober recovery communities, particular AA, to begin my journey. So rehab served its purpose. I'm not sure. Some people can get sober without rehab. I needed rehab to get sober. And also I needed every bit of pain that I went through and every problem that I faced to make me ready to get sober. There is no, ironically, statistically, there's really not a big difference between people that go to rehab to attempt to get sober and those that try to get sober without rehab. It's pretty similar. So
yeah, that's one of my kind of main memories of the whole your journey through there, like coming and visiting you there. And I didn't even know what was going on at that age. I just remember there was a giant like teepee kind of thing.
There was a teepee there that I never got to go into, by the way.
Yeah.
So I thought they must be getting high down there or something.
Yeah, maybe. So what was it like once you got out of rehab? What were you set up well to go about the recovery, or were you was it just crazy and chaotic, then you didn't really know where your life was going to go?
Well, what you have to realize is that most people, when they get sober, people don't go in to get sober because they're on a great run. Most people say, hey, man, my life's going good. I guess I'll quit drinking or I'll stop doing drugs, okay? Sure. Usually you get sober because you're facing a lot of crap going on, okay?
Humbled.
Exactly. But you also come out, and I had created such a mess of my life. It had a dumpster fire that I actually thought I would never going to be able to climb out from this huge ball of shit. And, you want to fix everything right away. I spent years creating this mess, but I wanted it fixed. I wanted to apologize to everybody, make sure, and just everything to go back to so-called normal. And I quickly realized that wasn't going to be the case, that there was so much work, so much damage done from my, you hear, it's a common saying is that, addiction is a family illness. It really is. And I mean, thank goodness, your mom is one of the most naturally healthy people, mentally, physically, and emotionally I've ever known. She's made one mistake in her life, and that was marrying me. But you don't realize till you get some separation from it, and so with that, I didn't realize how bad things were until I had some time where I was sober, and then I could, but also it became like, you don't realize is how you're constantly, even you guys, and you probably don't remember very well because of your age, but if you talk to your sisters, they would cover for me. They didn't want friends coming around at times and stuff, So it's just this huge cycle of dysfunctionality and sickness. On paper, my life had exceeded my expectations. We had a beautiful house, had a place at the beach. I had this beautiful family. I had a job that I loved. That's all I ever wanted to do was be a teacher. I had been able to coach and have some success. So I had been able to do all those things, but none of that was enough to stop me from becoming an alcoholic.
Yeah. So after the whole rehab and you kind of figuring out that this was going to be a tough path, you kind of started doing AA. And
first year of sobriety sucks.
Yeah.
Anybody out there listening, if you're struggling, man, let me first tell you this: it does get better. If it stayed like your first year is, probably hardly anybody would stay sober, frankly. Because again, you're climbing out from all the messes you've created. And
what's worse? Is it the people that you hurt in your life, in that part of the aspect, or is it just actually recovering on your side?
Well, long term, it's obviously those dealing with, I still have days. I mean, I'll be driving down the road, I'll hear a song, I'll hear somebody will say something.
Green Gatorade.
The Gatorade, and I'll start crying, man, out of nowhere, these emotions, because I did, and mainly it deals with my wife Teresa, or Bryce's mother. Is that, because I didn't honor her, and so that was the biggest, I knew if I stayed sober, my kids would be, my kids would be okay. We would be okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if my marriage would be okay. So that was, so that, you still live with that, the disappointment and the hurting of others. So.
Yeah. So, I can kind of agree with that. Like, just by not being very old when all this was happening,
you were always in my corner. You're like, Dad's good. Dad's cool. You thought Dad was ever, and in reality, you just didn't recognize. But if you asked particularly say Brianna or your oldest sister, she would have a different story about it. So,
I never thought about it like that, but for me, it's like I even tell you, like, I'll be thinking about things that happened when I was younger, like the Olive Garden story, and it's like, oh wait, Dad was drinking then,
Sure,
and now it's like almost even unimaginable. Like I don't see you, like I couldn't see you as that person that you were, and it's hard for me. Like I was even telling Ivan, like it was scary for me to be around people who drank alcohol because it was just so foreign to me.
It's important to remember is that the average person isn't me though. The average person is, it's roughly 10% of the population have addiction issues. Those other 90% drink normally, drink socially. So it's you can't paint with such a broad brush that alcohol is bad or all this. You got to be careful with that. But it's but that's an example, Bryce, is that you still have those memories that pop in your head. You still have to live with that. And that's some of the hardest things to live with.
So with your job, you work at the clinic and you talk to people that are currently going through addiction. Like I wanted to brush back on it. How important is that they make the decision for themselves?
Well, a lot of the people, obviously it's huge. Until you decide you want to. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people, initial step to getting sober, Ivan, is that they're forced to go in. And then they are able to take an honest look at themselves, okay? But until you're the one making it right, I believe anybody can will themselves to stay sober. If you're going to jail, you're going to stay sober.
Exactly.
Okay, or well, depending. If you go to there's in some cases it's easier to get drugs inside than outside. So or if you're wearing an ankle monitor, you're going to stay sober, or you're going to jail. Okay, so that's actually the easy part. Okay, and the early sobriety can actually be the easy part. It's when you get your freedom back, when you no longer have Johnny Law looking over your shoulder, because eventually you climb, and I tell everybody that eventually you're going to climb out from this. Then what?
Mm-hmm.
Because and ironically, you would think that most people that relapse, Ivan, would be because shit got bad again. It's because shit gets good again.
Yeah,
and the very thing, there's an old saying, don't let the gifts sobriety gave you get in the way of staying sober, because, the mind is an amazing thing. And I still, 10 years ago, almost 11 years sober now, I still have those moments, and I think to myself, man, it's been 11 years. I'm doing good. Wonder if it would look different. And I remember somebody said, wouldn't it be cool to be able to just go have 2 beers with dinner? And I thought to myself, not really. I never had 2 beers. I want a whole bottle of vodka. Even 11 years sober, that's what I think. I want the whole enchilada, man. I don't want 2 beers. That makes no sense to me. And even today, 11 years sober, I feel a drink at 5 o'clock in the morning sounds just as good at 5 in the afternoon to me.
Yeah. So I know you have some stories about what was that kind of jail or that you were in? It was like a step down from a real jail.
Oh, I was in work release.
Work
release. Yeah. I wasn't taking that as seriously as I probably should have. So.
Yeah, you had some stories.
I had some connections that I was getting released a lot, and I was getting released. Well, this is not good, and and I'm not making fun of this, but you have to have a sense of humor about this. My buddy Steve, who I was teaching with, he would pick me up from jail at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Dry, and he always had a cup of coffee. Thank you, Steve, for that, by the way. He would drive me to work, where I would then change into my teaching clothes, and I was going from jail to school to teach driver's education. And it's the irony of my life though was eating me alive. I was standing in front of kids, telling them the dangers of drinking and driving and all this stuff, and in reality, I had drunk that day probably, so it really was hard on me. So
yeah, I know you told me some funny stories about me and that. I guess you were one of the more educated guys.
I became like an in-house lawyer because I was helping people fill out paperwork and all this stuff, and then some of the guards started to actually kind of get on me about it, I guess. So I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to help these people.
And then the thing about the salt or the pepper or the sauces, they wanted to go to the real jail because they didn't.
Yeah, they would try to get over to the real jail because the food was better, and they could. And also, people then were claiming they were like Jewish or Islamic because they could request special diets. So it's the food's just ungodly bad. So
on this podcast, we're all about having healthy habits, doing good things. So I know you're an avid runner and a big distance runner. 7 marathons and a 50 miler, guys. That's no joke. But how was your running, and did you ever realize? We'll kind of do both sides of this. Did you ever realize hey, I'm drinking too much, it's affecting my running, and you didn't like that? Or after you got sober, was it wow, running really is my only it makes me feel good? Alright guys, I'm really sorry this episode got cut off short. We had some problems going on with the camera, but we're going to do a part 2 follow-up next week with where we left off on this pod. But yeah, I thought it was a really good episode. I hope you all enjoy. Hit that like button, subscribe, follow me on all my other socials. It'll be linked in the description. Be better, you guys.